Here. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about new home construction starts that are crashing. I think that's a little bit of a disingenuous title there. I don't really think that they are crashing, considering that we really have about as many new starts to new construction, like new starts for homes, as we did prior to the pandemic. In fact, I think it's a little bit higher than it was prior to the pandemic. And to think that it's actually crashing right now would, in my opinion, lead me to believe that the new home construction market would be less than it was prior to the pandemic, right? But it has dropped somewhat significantly considering where we were. And, when you think about it, from a 14% drop in new starts over the course of a month, that does seem pretty dramatic. And they call this like the biggest drop in the last 4 years. Really, if you go and you take a look at the chart that I leave down in the description, I'm not sure if I left it down there, but if you just go and Google new home starts FRED, F-R-E-D, it'll bring up the Federal Reserve chart showing like what the new home starts have been for like the last 50 years or something. But even if you just take it back to like the last 10 years, you're going to see that really right now, the new home starts are higher than they were prior to the pandemic. And if you take that chart and you look over the last, say, 5 years or so, it was April of 2022, from April to July, there was a significant drop in the new home starts. And I do believe that the news was talking about it back then, but it wasn't such big news out there that it created like this idea that there was going to be some more housing market shortages due to the fact of less construction that was taking place. More people were concerned about the input costs going into construction at the time, when you had elevated lumber prices and elevated labor costs and all the other energy costs and stuff going into it. It made it very difficult to operate at that time as far as getting a new home started. Today, things are getting a lot easier. And really, you can see it within the lumber market itself, that lumber prices have dropped and dropped significantly considering where they were just even a few years ago. I mean, lumber future prices ran all the way up to $1,700 per thousand, and today they're sitting at less than $550. In fact, I think they were somewhere around $527 when before I started this video, and they're dropping every day. So now, when you think about the position that we are in, at least the timing, right, that we are moving into the summertime, when generally this is when you want to start a new home. You want to get the framing done before the wintertime so that you can work on the house during the wintertime inside, doing the major construction, siding, windows, doors, and all that during the summertime, so that the house is weathered in by the time you get to the bad weather area, right? Timing as far as that goes. So right now would be the time that new starts would be ramping up, not dropping, right? I mean, considering the weather condition of things. However, the idea that the Federal Reserve is going to be keeping interest rates elevated going into the future has definitely run rampant through the markets now. And people are feeling that and now making decisions based on the idea that they are not going to see lower interest rates coming in this year. I mean, there is talk of interest rates cuts, but not nearly to the point that they once were, especially towards the end of last year, the end of 2023, there was all kinds of talks about how the interest rates are going to be dropping and dropping significantly, 7, 8 interest rate cuts or whatever it was. Oh, excuse me. All that has now faded away, and people are now starting to feel the idea of higher interest rates going into the future, and including inside of the mortgage market itself, that they will not be able to refinance those into lower rates, which is what I think a lot of people were anticipating at the end of last year, that they could buy a house and then move into that house and then a few months later be able to refinance that house at a lower interest rate. That idea is now fading away. In fact, you can even see it just recently, right? Just in the last week or so. Interest rates on the mortgages have moved up quite significantly. Now, I mean, when I say significantly, I think of about a half an interest point or something like that, a half an interest rate. But still, that's quite a bit, I mean, going even from 7.5% to 8 or 7 to 8%, that's like a significant number when you consider what the limitations that people are already feeling within the market. To have higher mortgage rates it's like, I don't know, like very devastating feeling for a lot of the new home buyers out there, right? Because people who are anticipating lower interest rates so they can afford to make those payments are now losing that idea with the higher interest rates that are now facing the markets. And you think about this. This is all due to perception. Like, the Federal Reserve hasn't changed anything about what they are doing for months, right? Like, they are literally sitting on their hands doing nothing different. They're unwinding the balance sheet at the same pace, right? They kept the interest rates, unchanged. They have done nothing, literally sitting on their hands doing nothing. But their words that they are using, that they are projecting out there to the people, are definitely having an impact. And you can just even see it within the mortgage market in the last few weeks, right? I mean, the moment that the people believed that the interest rates are going to start being elevated, you started seeing reflecting back into the mortgage market itself, and the interest rates started to move up, even though the Federal Reserve hasn't changed a thing about what they are doing. The idea of what they are going to do has changed, and that has also changed the market's perception of it. So again, as we move into the future here, if we do not have new home starts, where's the new inventory going to come from? It's going to have to come from the sale of existing homes. And if the sale of existing homes is very limited by the high interest rates, meaning that people who have purchased a home, prior to the interest rates moving up, they're most likely not going to want to sell that home. All right, they're going to want to stay in that home and keep that lower interest rate, as opposed to selling the house off and then having to move into another home with a higher interest rate payment to it. So this is a very big concern for a lot of people out there looking for that new inventory coming from the new home market, or from the existing home market, being limited by the people who have already got a mortgage at a low interest rate staying put. So again, like, where is the new inventory going to come from? If it's existing homes that are going to provide that new inventory, then it's going to have to come from either people like dying off, like the older generation, the silver tsunami, what a lot of people are talking about. It's going to have to come from people dying off and leaving their house available for purchase, or people are going to have to get foreclosed on, right, in order for them to bring that inventory to the market. Both of those are not very quickly moving things, like, happening within a couple of months now, right? These are things that are going to take years to progress through. And so even the idea of like a foreclosure happening, it takes time for that foreclosure to eventually make it to market, that home. And considering the low inventory and the high elevated prices, most likely I would feel that the foreclosure process would probably not actually go all the way to fruition when you can just sell the house off and sometimes even make a profit off of it. So what is this going to do to prices, right? If you do not have the new construction market ramping up, on a trajectory of moving up, not down or sideways, then you are not going to get the new inventory coming from the new construction market. We're going to be limited on new inventory coming from the existing home sales, considering that the interest rates are still quite elevated and people are going to stay locked into the lower ones. The older population dying off doesn't happen in a single month or 2 months, or even, who knows how long that could take. And when it comes to foreclosures or people getting laid off and not being able to make those payments, again, this is a process in which that it takes time to actually come to fruition. And still, we don't know exactly how people are going to behave, whether they can sell that house off, take on, roommates. We're not in the same condition that we were in back during, say, the great financial crisis, where there was a huge overbuild that was taking place. A lot of people don't realize that there was a lot of new construction that was happening at the time that is not occurring right now. Like, a lot of people say it's going to be worse than the great financial crisis. Okay, in a lot of ways I can see that happening, right? But when you think about the conditions that led up to the great financial crisis, we are not in those conditions right now. We don't have a ton of mortgages that are toxic in the system. We don't have a crazy overbuild that's taken place. We don't have like a lot of the situations that are occurring with like people who were not qualified mortgage, like borrowers, being qualified. Like, only the most qualified borrowers are getting loans right now. It's a very, very different condition that we are experiencing than, back during the great financial crisis. So, alrighty. There's probably something else I wanted to add to that, but I don't know. I'll figure it out here in a minute. All right, Brody. Thanks again, Simon. Well, thank you for being here, brother. Don't forget to hit the like button the like on the way into the stream, everyone. Yes, please do. Liking the video and commenting as well as typing in the chat are what YouTube considers engagements, and the video streams with higher engagement pop up in more people's feeds. Thank you so much, Brody. That is exactly right. So we'll get better discussions in the chat. I totally agree. You know, right now we have 247 people with 65 likes. Let's get it up to 200 likes here in the next 10 minutes. Everybody go hit that like button. Hey, UE, could you just do a quick review of lumber prices today with the crashing of building starts? So lumber prices right now are moving down significantly, and this is something that I was not really anticipating. But then again, I was also anticipating that the builder sentiment would have moved into a full positive position. Yes, home builder sentiment has become positive, right? But there's a lot of indicators that they use in order to determine what home builder sentiment is, right? The only thing right now within the home builders that is still dramatically negative is the buyer traffic. Like, that's the one concern coming to the builders that is most extreme for them, is that if they go and build this home, are they going to be able to sell it, right? And now, are they going to be able to sell it for a price that they are anticipating when they start the project? See, now that's the other thing to it. Like, if you think, okay, I can sell this house for $500,000, but then by the time you complete it, the homes in that particular area aren't selling for $500,000, they're only selling for $425,000 or something like that. This is very concerning for the home builder out there. Like, they don't want to participate in a market that's like that. Now, if you're building a house for and you're anticipating you're going to sell it for 500 and you end up selling it for 520, well, then that encourages you. You want to build homes, right? You want to build as many homes as you can in that environment. But you're very cautious the other way around. Now, this is reflected within the lumber market, within the lumber futures, because the major home buyers out there, not like the home builders out there, not like the guys that I work with. I work at a local lumber yard. You know, we do kind of smaller projects. I'm talking the guys like D.R. Horton, like the big dudes who build like thousands and thousands and thousands of homes, right? I mean, it's just, you know, massive amounts of them across the nation. Those guys, they participate in the futures market. Like, they buy lumber futures to, you know, secure the price on their projects going into the future. So when you see lumber futures dropping dramatically, especially when you have issues with like lumber mills shutting down, like Oregon is full of lumber mills right now that are shutting down. This to me is a very cautious position to be in, right? The home builders don't want to buy into the lumber futures. That means that they are not anticipating doing a lot of projects, right? If they were anticipating doing a lot of projects, they would be ramping up their purchases going into the summer, but we see lumber futures dropping, right? Quite the opposite kind of feeling that's going on there. And so if you have that sort of situation happening at the same time, you got Oregon mills that are shutting down, and I would only assume that other mills out there, you know, across the nation, up in Canada, are also feeling the pressure, right? Lumber futures coming down, that's their price, that's their money, that's their income. Now you think about what these mills faced over the last few years, right? Lumber futures moved up to $1,700 per thousand. People were demanding lumber. These guys ramped up production. They hired more people, expanded their facilities, they were building new mills, everything, kilns, right, for drying lumber. All this stuff started ramping up. Well, now the prices dropped dramatically, right? And the sales have fallen. So now these mills are sitting in a position in which that they have all this, you know, expanded investment into production, but they're no longer getting the price for it. I mean, you think about it, 500 per thousand is the same price that we were selling lumber at it back in 2017, right? I mean, years and years and years ago, way before the pandemic even, right? So 500 per thousand is a very normal price for lumber, right? But it's not a normal price for the mills to operate in today, because now with the higher labor cost, input cost, travel cost, stuff that goes into it, that lumber at 500 per thousand is not a profitable position for a lot of these mills to be in, and they're going to curtail development. Well, if they're curtailing development, that means there's less inventory of lumber. If there was any spark, right, to the home builder sentiment, there is not enough lumber out there to fulfill that demand, or at least I don't think there would be enough lumber out there to fill a significant amount of demand, all right? And so what would end up happening there is we would end up seeing the lumber prices moving up significantly or dramatically. I can't predict what these numbers would be or how far they would go or how far out they are. I mean, all that is going to be determined as, the closer we get to it. However, when you see the Federal Reserve keeping an open-ended forward guidance, right? I think this is very important, right? When the Federal Reserve has an open-ended forward guidance, then that leaves the narrative to be the predictor of where interest rates are going to be going, right? See, like if the Federal Reserve made a statement, we are going to be cutting rates at this particular meeting. We just don't know how much yet, but we are going to do it, right? That is a close-ended forward guidance coming from the Federal Reserve, meaning that markets can now participate in a way that they know that the Federal Reserve is going to be conducting themselves, right? They may not know how much, they may have to argue about where it is, how much, to what level or whatever, but they know that it's going to happen. That cut is going to take place. However, if the Federal Reserve says, we're data dependent, we're not quite sure, may have cuts this year, may not, may need to increase, nobody knows exactly what that is, right? Well, that's an open-ended forward guidance. Now, the people are stuck at the perception of what the narrative is saying. Right? If people feel within the narrative that the Federal Reserve is going to keep interest rates elevated due to high inflation or, whatever reasonings that are going on out there, they start acting in that fashion. And it starts creating the situations that we are now experiencing within like the mortgage market, where you see the interest rates start to move up. Well, if that starts to happen, then people get very nervous about building homes. Right? Not only do they not want to build a home for sale, but then they're also nervous about building a home right now because of the elevated interest rates that they may get a better deal on going into the future if they just wait. So again, this open-ended forward guidance leaves the market to interpret whatever it is that they feel that the Federal Reserve might be trying to allude to. All right, 363 people watching, 95 likes. Let's go hit that like button, guys. We should be having it up to at least 200 right now. All right, good morning, chat. Simon is dead on about debt. I am a single father on a lower income. However, I got out of debt 3 years ago, and I have never felt so free and less anxious even now. Yeah, and that's something that I have found, when I talk to a lot of people out there, you can almost see somebody who is in debt. You can almost see the stress on their face, right? Even if you don't know anything about them, you don't even know their name, right? They're just standing in a crowd, but you can almost see the physical appearance of debt stress on somebody, right? And once that is gone, once that debt is gone, and that freedom of not owing anybody anything, it gives you a whole different energy, right? That people will then recognize within you, right? It's crazy it literally is just like that too. All right, nice work, Kurt. Please like. Yes, absolutely, great job, man. Okay, no one has money to buy new houses. That is not true. All right. See, I mean, if that was true, then a third of all homes right now wouldn't be being sold to cash buyers. You think about that, a third of all homes right now, more than just about any time in history, are being sold to all cash buyers. They can care less what the interest rates are. Don't care. Do not care what the interest rates are. And they're willing to buy at this price. What does that tell you? Right? That should be that should say something. The idea that nobody can afford to buy houses at this price, the average job can't afford to buy a house at this price. Even a decent paying job can't afford to buy houses at this price, right? But doesn't mean that nobody can do it, right? See, this is something that I think is very strange about the idea of what it is to live in the United States. See, a lot of people think when you live in the United States and you have a 9-to-5 job, that automatically should entitle you for a position in order to buy a home. The American dream, right? To be able to work hard, save your money, put a down payment on a house, work your entire life to pay the house off, have a retirement, have the kids, have all this stuff off of a regular job. It doesn't work like that. Not anymore. There was a time when it did. right? This is something that I find very interesting, because we have talked about this quite a bit here on this channel, is about how things are so much different here in the United States. Back when we were a manufacturing powerhouse and we could produce the world's greatest stuff, and we were sending that stuff out there to the world, and the world was sending us their money, we really enjoyed an increase in our standard of living because of that. And now it's nothing that you can do to change the way that people behave. People enjoy luxuries. There is nothing you can do to stop that, right? People want better food, they want better clothes, they want better houses, they want better cars, they want better locations, they want better vacations. They want better everything, right? Because luxurious things are what humans really naturally progress towards, right? They want to feel better about their environment, they want to do things that are fun. That's it. Like, you can't stop that from happening, right? So if you're in a position in which that you have this new money coming in and the standard of living is starting to move up, and the people are really enjoying that by purchasing of luxuries, that purchasing of luxuries starts driving in foreign competition and starts driving out domestic manufacturing. Now, here's something that I was thinking about, and I don't know how else to really describe this other than when you have so many people out there complaining, bitching, like absolutely pointing the finger and saying this was political positioning, this was a political fault, right? Those rich, greedy corporate bastards took our manufacturing jobs and they sent them over to another nation, right? And I've heard this so many times in my life. And now I actually, at one time in my life, actually kind of believed that. Here's something that I've kind of figured out, though. If the people hadn't moved into luxuries to begin with, then the manufacturing wouldn't have tried to find a cheaper place to go. They wouldn't have found a industrious nation out there who had lower input cost, had lower labor cost in general, had transportation that could make it to market. If the people hadn't moved into the luxurious positions that they were in, those manufacturing bases wouldn't have found another place to go to. Now, when people say this is a political fault, what was politics going to do to stop this from taking place? Like, what was the political environment going to look like if they were going to try and stop the manufacturers from leaving? Think about that for just a minute. Think about the nations out there who tried to take control of their people and how it is that they were behaving so that they could keep their manufacturing and their industriousness capabilities continuing within their nation. Think about what it is that some of these nations out there had done to their people in order to keep that from happening, right? I mean, this is when people say there needs to be a political environment that controls the situation in which that people were moving into luxuries, driving out the manufacturing of our nation. Think about the nations that had done something about that to suppress the people, to keep them from moving into luxuries. Is that the position that you really want to go to? I mean, there's nations out there that gave pretty good examples of it, and they put a boot on your face because of it, right? See, I don't want the political environment to do anything about it, because that political environment means that you lose all your freedoms. You know? But you'll have a job. You'll have the manufacturing job. Go to work. All right, moving on. Let's talk about housing instead. Did I get something? What's that up there? Oh, hey, thank you, Gone S, for joining the channel. You're going to really enjoy those member-only live streams that we do, and there's a whole list of videos there. We break down Federal Reserve speeches, monetary policies, some really good documents that, mainly coming from the Federal Reserve itself. Sometimes we go to like the IMF or something like that. If you want to watch a good one, since you just joined the channel, go check out the one that I did on this, dollar funding stresses in China. Oh, super good. Talks about the dollar and the demand for dollar outside of the United States. That is just huge. All right, let's cruise down here to the bottom. Alrighty, smartest investment advice is to not get married, or if you do, vet her for at least 5 years, and even then, because my feelings. Pooping while standing. I love the name. I love that handle. All right. You are looking too deep into it. No, I don't think so. All right, yes, America first. Hey guys, get married, just don't be a complete fool and invite the state into the union between two people. I agree with that one right there. I mean, there's no need to put the state involved in a corporate contract between you and another person. The only, I mean, I don't know any advantageous thing for a man to get married. I have no idea how it is to be advantageous to the man to get married, right? I just don't see it. So, if anything, it's a guaranteed setup that you will, if things don't work out, you're going to get punished, right? That's what it ends up being. And so, back in the day, I can imagine that, getting married meant some sort of security that, your woman wasn't going to like, go and mess around with somebody else. That's not the case anymore. Like, that doesn't guarantee nothing, right? No, like that is like very little respect, for the sanctity of that nowadays. And so it's not a matter of that. It's like, in the eyes of a religious view or the eyes of the state, why would you want the state involved? Like, I can understand the religious point of things. Like, I mean, if you're, a religious person and this is your belief and faith and stuff like that, then totally, I totally get it, right? But to involve the state in your life, like now the state's going to come in and conduct the way that you handle yourself and what it is that happens if you were to no longer be together, like all the combined assets and everything that you have had during that time, like there, I mean, I can see where, maybe at times that it may be, advantageous for, the man to get married, if he's married into a richer family or, she's really smart or something like that, can make a lot of money or there's business involved in that fashion. But for the most part, if the relationship falls apart, the man's going to get damaged dramatically because of that. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. There's no point in getting the state involved in any of that stuff. Yeah. All right, moving down. Okay, prenups are thrown out all the time. Allegations of abuse are first line divorce tactics used. You'll have to pay her attorneys for cheating on you and likely give her half, etc. Marriage is done. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I see it all the time. I mean, I'm really thankful for for my wife. Sarah and I have been together since, we were 18 years old. We have gone through some shit. We've gone through a lot of stuff. We've gone through things that most people would have probably never have put up with, for any kind of length of time. And I'm not saying that that was a good thing. I mean, we had to work through a lot of stuff. But I really honestly feel like we are a very rare case, my wife and I, to be together since we were 18 years old. Most people I know have been divorced several times, and I never mind. We'll move on. All right. Marriage was viewed as the foundation of a healthy society. It's the basic contract of civilization, not so much anymore. Yeah, it really isn't. All right, no point in getting. Why are we talking about marriage? Let's move on to something else. All right, Benny, what do you have to say? All right, I had a friend who used once and had states so involved in their marriage that the state watched him procreate. All right. Divorce is a sin. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I think it all depends on the situation that you're in. Okay, why have the cow when you can have the butcher? Do you see other building materials like windows, roofs dropping like lumber has? No. In fact, I've seen all those ones moving up. The only difference that I really see now, with the building materials when it comes to like doors and windows and siding and stuff like that is the availability of it. It is very available, right? There was a time when you could order some of this stuff and it would, like, you didn't even know when you were going to get it. It could be months out or weeks out. Who knows? Like, it was very obscure as far as lead times go. Nowadays, those lead times have moved up dramatically. Like, they are coming a lot quicker. A vinyl window, for example, there was a time I could order a vinyl window and get it in 10 days. That was really quick. That moved out to like, Jesus, almost 2 months at one point. Right now, it's about 2 weeks. That's pretty good. Like, to be able to get a window in 2 weeks, a vinyl window, any custom size, whatever you want, that's pretty decent timing. And now time is money, right? So if you're waiting 2 months to get a window, then that's costing you. Not only does it cost you for the product, but then it also costs you because it's time, right? So if you order it 2 months in advance, that's cool, I guess, if you're like logistically aware in that fashion. But for the most part, generally people aren't that way. Like, you order a window and you have like, a certain expectation of when it's going to come in. With it only being 2 weeks, that's a very short lead time. That's money, right? If you can get a window quick, if you can get product quick, that's savings. However, the actual bottom line price of it, that has not come down. In fact, roofing I saw go up a little bit. Steel prices, like the steel panel prices, pole barn metal, a lot of people will call it, that's come down a little bit. Not significantly, but like I think it was around 10% from one of my vendors, and that was last week. So that's a pretty decent amount. Or at least it's a good start. You know? But everything else is still quite elevated. Just the lumber framing has come down. Plywood prices came down some, but I think those are going to be moving back up. I think OSB is coming in a limited supply. So if you have OSB, which is like the alternative to plywood, it's the cheaper version. If that comes up in limited supply, then that's going to put more pressure demand on plywood, which would then start increasing the plywood prices. So even though you see lumber futures coming down, and plywood prices, although aren't great, they're much better than they were. I think right now is probably about as low as they're going to get, and we'd probably see lumber or plywood prices moving up from here, even if you see lumber futures falling, just because of the limited supply of OSB. Does that make sense? What time is it? 2. Okay, I'm going to give it like another 5 minutes, and then we're going to call it quits. All right. You are generalizing. It's dependent on the person. I actually know female business owners, multimillionaires who married a person, trainer, and one trainer, and one who is still wants to be a rock star in their 30s. Okay. I'm not saying that the other way around. What I found is women of a certain degree of accomplishment, business minded, business owners, they have this higher level of I don't know, like assertion to them. The men that they generally have in their life are kind of beta men, right? They're the ones who are submissive men who would probably fall into that position anyway. Like they like playing and enjoying and having fun and stuff like that. They're not necessarily the business-minded, business-driven, trying to, push forward kind of people. Like, I'm not trying to knock at, I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing, right? I'm not at all, right? I mean, hey, you are who you are, that's cool. But that's generally what I end up finding with it. Now, if, most men are looked at like, hey, you have to perform, you have to do stuff, you have to provide, you have to be skilled, you have to, right? Which puts you at a much elevated position of authority and assertiveness, right? You got to be up there. And that ends up generally finding a submissive partner, right? If you're sitting at this level, then the partner is submissive. Like if you have two authoritative people up there, they end up clashing. So the polarization, the dynamics, the power structure, right? You have a dominant, assertive, masculine, submissive, feminine counterpart. Like this is how it ends up working. And generally that's how most people end up living their life happily, is by being in those dynamics, being in those particular energies, right? When you start forcing them out of those energies, this is where the conflicts really start to begin. Like, so I am generally speaking, yes, right? There are people out there who are different cases. I know people out there of different cases of that. But generally speaking, that's usually how it goes down. Saving people is the best business to be in. All-nighter hider, my man with the wrench. How you doing today? All right, my wife is a chef executive and I'm a mechanic. I do have a lot of tools. Yeah. Oh, so sorry, wasn't for you, Yui. Oh, okay. Hey, Wayne, busy catching up and scheduling jobs. Hope you're well. Anybody need work done on their house in Central Texas? Hit me up. Oh man. Listening to this while applying for jobs in German industrial company. They're not very optimistic about the near future anyway. Good night. Yeah, I hear you, man. The dynamic seldom works. Women always want a man who with higher status than themselves. Yeah, that's right. That is very true, and they want, I mean, it's not like it's just, think about it from the natural course of human evolution, right? I mean, think about it prior to the days of what we have here with our civilized, societies or whatever you want to call it, right? The hardwiring instinctual behaviors that are deep rooted within every single human cannot cannot be changed, right? Like you can forcefully tell yourself I'm not going to behave this way, which a lot of people do, and then they don't conduct themselves in a way that is appropriate to them, right? They end up trying to act in a way that people would be approving of, which is people pleasing behaviors, right? And this is the way that a lot of them, actually a lot of men behave, them, conduct themselves. And so if you think about it from like the naturally like hard wired instinctual down deep inside of every one of us, you have to have like this idea that there is like, just take a society, a small society of people to begin with, right? Everybody's going to know who each other is, right? They're going to know each other, I mean, there's only like, 100 of us, so they're, we're all going to know who each other is, right? Now, in that group, it is going to become very obvious on who it is that is the leaders and who it is that is like the followers, right? The players or whatever. That social status right there, that is what is attractive because it shows leadership qualities, it shows survival instinct qualities, it shows like that, that's ultimately it. If you can be a leader, security, provider, right? Anything that can, make sure that your life is going to continue on longer. It doesn't matter anything else after that, right? So this is where like a lot of people think, well, if you have a lot of money, that's going to be attractive. It's not the money that does it. It's the ability to provide that does it, right? That's what really is like attractive out there, is the idea that you have a survival part of you, right? And that's really what it comes down to, is just like the hardwiring instinctual behaviors. Like, I mean, same thing with like, it's the same thing within men. Like, the hard wiring within men is to procreate, right? Like, I mean, it sounds like, I know a lot of people are like, yeah, men are dogs or whatever. Of course they are. That's what they were, that's what they were meant to do. Have as many kids as you could possibly have, right? Spread your seed, right? This is the whole idea behind it. And so it makes it very interesting when you, God, why am I talking about this stuff? All right. So it makes it very interesting when you see out there a guy who will cheat on his wife that he absolutely loves. Like he loves her like absolutely to the heart of his core, right? But will still cheat on her. And that's weird to think. Like, why would you do that? It's because that hard wiring, instinctual thought buried so deep inside of every one of us is almost uncontrollable, right? Now you can control your urges and stuff like that, and a lot of people do, and they don't cheat on their women or whatever. But when it happens, people are like, why would you do that? And they go, I don't know, right? It's because they really don't know. It's like they literally don't know why they did it, why it was so hard in there to try and like, keep down. It's because of that instinctualness being, that is buried deep in every one of us. And the same thing for the woman's side of things. They want to be with the strongest man who is going to provide them with the child who is going to be most fit for survival, right? That's not something to blame people for. Like, none of this is anything to blame anybody for. There's no blame to throw around. You know, I mean, it's not agreeable for a lot of people, and it doesn't feel good, and it doesn't seem right. But this is the natural being of people. And so, if you have a woman who is looking at somebody who is just like, you're not a good provider, you're not, survival instincts kind of, aspect. They call a lot of this, they call it hypergamy or whatever. But if they're not going to provide that for them, then what they end up doing is they end up cheating on somebody who does. See, women don't cheat on men they absolutely love. Men cheat on women who they absolutely love. Women will fall in love with one particular guy and just be absolutely head over heels in love with that one dude. And they won't have eyes for any other dude, right? Until they lose eyes for that dude and they move it over to another guy, which happens. Like even the strongest, most professional, high-ranking, status-oriented professional guy out there who seems to be on paper perfect for a partner will lose that woman, right? Because she ends up having eyes for another one. And that's what ends up happening is women will truly love, well, they never truly love a man, but they will love one man at a time, right? But men can love multiple women at a time. And this is like where a lot of the confusion and dynamics end up getting, so frustrated and complicated for people. And they just can't, understand what it is that is happening out there. All right, moving onward. Okay, I got to call it quits. I don't know why I'm talking about this stuff. This isn't even anything that I know anything about. It's just my observations. All right. I'm stocking up on bullets, condoms, and beans. F gold, F real estate, F stock market. I wouldn't say that to gold, man. I would pick up the bullets and beans. I don't know about condoms, but and definitely gold. I mean, I wouldn't put gold out of my realms of like something to have for barter, for security outside of the third party claim. I mean, gold is a very useful thing to have. Like, I wouldn't put every dime you have into it, but I would certainly put some money into, 10th ounce rounds or something like that. You got to love yourself first. You always have to love yourself first, No, I'm first time buyer hoping to get into a house within the next 2 or 3 years. Yeah, good observations. Well, thank you. All right, gold has legs, Interesting comments, Simon. Cheers. Well, thank you guys. I mean, again, I'm not like, I mean, I just see there's UE's red pill. I don't know, man. I don't know what any of that's supposed to mean. Like everybody else accuses me of being something that I don't know what it is that they're trying to label me as. This is just what I've seen out there, right? I mean, from a guy who's been married for, Jesus, how long have I been married now? Almost 30, well, not quite 30 years, but we've been together 30 years. For somebody who's been with his partner for 30 years, life partner, friend, lover, everything that goes with it, the complications, the fighting, the great times, the understandings, the communications, the trust, all the stuff that people would have ever experienced within a relationship, I've done that. Like, I mean, all of it, right? And it's hard. Like, I mean, I totally get it, why it is that people have such a hard time staying together. I totally get it. Like, I mean, I understand. And it's society and the way that we were raised to believe. Like, it is so, it's pretty intriguing to really try and break it down and understand it for the reality of what it is, right? But ultimately, the society has conditioned both men and women to not be good partners for each other. And that's what's sad about it. And once you kind of figure it out that, it was the way that we have been raised and how the movies and TV shows and songs and just the general like discussions that are had, like literally condition the people to not be good partners for each other anymore. And we're a victim of our upbringing, a victim of our circumstances on a lot of that stuff. All right. God and nature has never promised anyone happiness. That's right. For some reason, this is a universal assumption. maybe, just maybe, suffering is the only thing we're all guaranteed. That's right. And, that is true. Like, suffering, when desire is the root of all suffering, right? So suffering is not something that you would experience unless you had a desire, right? If you don't desire anything, you don't suffer. And that's really where it comes down to, is that, like, for men, they sit in quiet desperation, really not conducting themselves the way that they would really want to be conducting themselves, out of fear that they're going to piss somebody else off, right? And I know this from my own personal experiences throughout my life, is that I've done that, right? And trying to break free from that sort of behavior is not exactly easy. Like, you can do it in all kinds of situations, but then some situations you find yourself slipping right back into, this people-pleasing behavior thing, and you're not even sure why you did it. Like, consciously, it's just like, don't do that, right? But then you do it. And you're thinking, man, how come I did that? It's because society has conditioned you to behave that way, because that's what people are expecting of you. Man, it's hard to let go of all that, right? And once you let go of all those expectations and the idea of what it is that, that you truly desire in life, because really everything that you desire is already there, available to you, right? There's a world of abundance. If you don't desire those things, then the suffering goes away too, right? And it's very hard to understand that. I gotta go, guys. We were supposed to talk about housing and stuff like that. Why did we end up talking about all this marriage and stuff? All right. People pleasing is a defense mechanism. It is. It very much is, right? It's because you're scared about people figuring out who it is that you truly are, right? And so you're defending against that idea because you need to protect something, right? Like, protect your identity or shame or something of that fashion. And it's hard. Like, if you have, oh God, why do I keep talking about this? What time is it? All right, it's 11:57. I gotta go. I'm just gonna leave it at this, since we were talking about this anyway. Is that most of the time that people are doing that, like not conducting themselves to what they is truly what they want to do, but instead doing it as that people pleasing, that defense mechanism to do it, is because you're really scared of letting somebody else, or letting people know of who it truly is, of who you are truly on the inside, because you're afraid of the reactions that you are going to get from them, because you have been acting and faking it and pretending for so long. People out there that you have engaged with, your job, your friends, your family, everything that everybody knows about you, is expecting you to behave in that fashion. That people pleasing, I'm going to act, I'm going to try and do things that doesn't rock the boat, I'm going to do all, whatever. When you do all that stuff, right, they expect that out of you. But the moment that you say, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm going to tear that shield off again, and I'm just going to, conduct myself in the way that is most appropriate for me, and I don't care if it like offends anybody, I don't care if it pisses anybody off or whatever, and you actually go out and do that, you're going to find that, yes, you do end up pissing a lot of people off, because you are not conducting yourself in the way that they thought that you were, but you weren't being the real you. So you don't want those people in your life anyway. And then what you are going to find is that once you do start conducting yourself in the way that is truly you, you are actually going to polarize the situation and bring people even closer to you, saying, yes, there's the real you, dude. That's what we've been looking for, right? Not the guy who is acting this way for this group and acting this way for that group and acting, whatever for that group. You are the same person no matter who you are communicating with at any given time, right? Once you have done that, you're going to find that everything in the universe becomes more abundant to you, right? The things that you have truly wanted in your life, those desires, they're just there. You don't desire them anymore. There's no more suffering, right? Because you're now bringing yourself to the universe, bringing yourself to the people, bringing yourself to your family in a way that is most appropriate for you, in a way that you can conduct yourself without having to fake it or show some sort of other condition of your life to then make them appeal to you. right? It doesn't work like that. All right. You guys have been fun. We're 409 people, 200, I don't know, we were supposed to talk about housing. We ended up talking about, consciousness instead. All right. I'd love to hear about your time in Vegas and how you parlayed the acquiring and activating, stacking, nicing, any three. Okay. Being so sure of being oneself ensures you know nothing. The older I get, the less that I am sure I know. All right. Great talk, man. We're all actors. Thank you. Thank you, see ya. Thank you, Yui, see ya. Conscious housing. All right. We talked about housing indirectly. Yeah, we did. All right. It's a result of collective contribution to energy. We all contribute to society. And that's it, man. Right on, brother. Right on. Okay, guys, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the talk today. I got to go back to work, but thank you so much for being here. We got 396 people still watching with 225 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. Thank you all for the support that you throw at the Uneducated Economist. I really appreciate everything you guys do for us, for me, for my family, and everything. All right, Uneducated Economist, you let me know.